Hello, John.
Hello, Oliver.
Today we're going to talk about a list of Irish companies and what happened to them. There were some fantastic Irish companies in Ireland. They were in manufacturing, they created all kinds of products, and a lot of them are not in Ireland anymore. A lot of companies have gone out of Limerick, and there's Tala, Dublin, Carlow, you name it. Okay, Cork. So Ireland had the Anglo-Irish Free Trade Agreement in 1965, and we can kind of trace back the problems to that. And Ireland tried to join the European Union in 1963, I think it was. Who was it blocked? Somebody blocked it. Was it France or something?
Yeah, France and Charles de Gaulle. Britain and Ireland, and I don't know, some other country, but were trying to join it at that time, and de Gaulle prevented it.
Okay, so what happened was it moved on, and we had the Anglo-Irish Free Trade Agreement of 1965. This was actually very good for cattle exports at the time and for agriculture. Things were looking well, but for industry, you say it was a bad thing. And we're going to move on. We're going to talk about that. But before we talk about that, I'm going to give you a list of companies that you compiled yourself on Facebook through the groups and that. So I'm going to give you a list of the companies, and then you're going to talk about all the different companies that you know of. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first company, Brown and Paulson. You're going to talk about the sugar beet factories, Boland's Biscuits, O'Mara Bacon Factory, Cleves, Irish Sugar, Perry's Brewery, and Letts in Enniscorthy. Forenka, which was in Limerick, I think, was it? Ranks, which was in Dublin and Limerick. Donnelly Sausages, Imco Dry Cleaners, Green Hills Napkins and Towels. And then in Tala we have Telectron, Irish Metal and Chemicals, Gallagher's Tobacco, Ernie's Chocolates, Spicer's Bakery. Was that in Longford, was it?
No, Spicer's Bakery was in Balbriggan. That was their, they had a place there, but they produced the bread in Navan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the bakery is still there, and they were a marvellous bakery.
Okay, so and then you had the makers of, we all remember the famous sweet in Ireland, Peggy's Leg. Peggy's Leg was made by Lemon Sweet Factory, and the Lemon Sweet Factory closed in 1984. You had Munster Chipboard in County Kerry. You had a few places in Waterford. Was Cherry's Brewery in Waterford?
Cherry's Brewery, I think it was. I remember it, but there was Letts Brewery. Letts.
And we're going to come on to Letts as well. I just want to finish the list here, okay? So Irish Cereals, Semperit, which was a big employer, 650 jobs gone there. Then you had the carpet companies, Navan Carpets, Yall Carpets, Kincora Carpets. You had Clover Meats, you had Clones Meats, Arklow Pottery. You had a job interview there, you were telling me at some stage. Halpin's Tea, 1984, I think it closed. Limerick, 500 jobs. Krupp's Manufacturers, I think they've done kitchen stuff.
Madison's in Cork, in Limerick also, and Halpin's Tea, you probably
know. Yeah. So Artex Packaging, 170 people in Limerick, gone. Then you have Royal Tara, Galway Crystal, Mako, Dell, a loss of 2,500 jobs in Limerick alone. So I mean, there's been quite a lot of job losses in Ireland, and of course now what we have in place of those is the American companies, and we've become a tax haven, and that's what's really keeping us going. So we'll start off, I suppose, with the Anglo-Irish Free Trade Agreement of 1965, and then we'll move on to the companies. So do you want to talk about that?
Certainly. The Irish Free Trade Agreement was promoted by the government at the day and the media as being a good thing and beneficial. But they neglected to tell us that it was going to lead to a tremendous amount of job losses in the manufacturing and distributive trades. Don't forget, we had a lot of companies, even more than what's mentioned, that you mentioned there. I think the Mattersons in Limerick, there was one, Jacobs they were in Bishop Street in Tala, there was other ones that I hope I'll remember as we're talking.
Yeah, we'll go through them anyway. Yeah. Right. But the free trade agreement anyway, you think it was a bad thing for manufacturing?
Oh, it was, because do you see the Anglo-Irish Free Trade Agreement, and this is the sort of lack of what I call prudent running of the country. of this country, which is an agricultural country. So anything that a government proposes should always take account of the manufacturing sector and be very wary of agreements like Anglo-Irish free trade agreement, because it led to the introduction of supermarket monopolies later on, which led to the destruction of the manufacturing base in this country, in the food industry. By the way, there was jam manufacturers closed.
Yeah,
Anyway,
so well, we'll start off anyway. Brown and Paulson, were they a cereal company or?
Brown and Paulson were a cereal company, and they also had the license at the time to produce Kellogg's cornflakes, which they did very successfully. They had hundreds of people employed, and they managed to have Kellogg's with 75% of the Irish market.
Okay.
This agreement probably resulted in the closure of the Kellogg's arrangement with Brown and Paulson, and they shifted the manufacture, which they were doing in the UK, so they closed the Irish operation, which was a dreadful thing to do. I think part of the reason for closure of some of these companies was, regretfully, the breakout of the troubles in Northern Ireland. It affected the confidence of people in the manufacturing area, because it was considered that was going to affect the security of the Republic of Ireland.
Particularly later on, when we'll be talking about Tide Harima. Ferenca, I mean, there was a kidnapping of a high-profile business person.
Just aside from that,
yeah.
There was the perception. I'm talking about now the industries. There was household names here closing and shifting their production, and then re-importing the stuff into the country, adding to the balance of payments, if you like. So this was something that any worthwhile government would have anticipated and made sure didn't happen when they were negotiating this Anglo-Free Trade Agreement. You want to be up early when you're dealing with the like of the British or the EU. You want to be wide awake and make sure that what you have, you hold. But they didn't do that.
See, I think, look, we see the same problems today with the government. What we have is we have government people, people in government that don't understand business. They're not business people, and they go into these agreements and they haven't got a clue. And we can see it even now.
This is the neglect, and this is people suffer as a result of that. And they introduced the voice of policies and kind of have people wasting their effort trying to undo what they've done. And in the meantime, companies have closed. They were very important in employment in this country. When you're doing negotiating agreements, the last thing you should preside over is the closure of any company.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you don't know what you're doing, that's what happens.
The sugar beet factories, at one time there was 10,500 sugar beet growers in Ireland. We even had sugar beet trains, and I think the last factory closed, I think around 2006, but they're talking about reopening it again. So do you want to talk about the sugar beet factories?
Yes, well, the sugar beet factories, there was 4 of them in the country. You had Carlow, Mallow in County Cork, Tuam in Galway. There was another one that its location just slips me mind. These are ones though that I knew, and I also knew as I was working and travelling throughout the country to customers in the grocery trade at the time. There would often be, what would I call it, traffic jams with lorries and tractors bringing in loads of beet into the sugar factory in Carlow and in Tuam. And Tuam in the west of Ireland was a great boon to farmers in that area who produced beet for the farmers. At the time that when we had our own sugar here, it had a knock-on effect to produce valuable agricultural products that resulted in our sugar being perfect and really a lot better than what we have now by way of sugar, irrespective of the fact that now it's all imported. And if there's ever a ship strike or some other difficulty looming, which no doubt there will, what are we going to do for sugar?
Well, there you go. Boland's biscuits.
No, but I'm not finished about the sugar.
Okay.
No, the sugar, as far as I'm concerned, and it was a Fianna Fáil government, I think, Mary Coughlin, who was Minister for Agriculture, and I think she was a teacher or something. So when you're in that Minister for Agriculture, you want to have a brief that you know what you're at. Yeah. And that the last thing you do, irrespective of what any EU or wherever you're in, you're not going to close basic industries that have farmers benefiting and the economy benefiting and the balance of payments right. Here we closed these blinking factories and they were importing sugar, so there's another balance of payments. It's very hard to understand the mentality of governments that presided over this dreadful demise of such manufacturing entities and Irish people working, thrown them on the scrap heap, because I was thrown on the scrap heap many a time myself with closures of blinking companies that were household names, and suddenly I believe now in hindsight with the dreadful policies of successive governments.
Limerick, there was a lot of bacon factories, O'Mara Bacon, I think, was that in Limerick?
O'Mara, yes, that was in Limerick, and Madison's, and there was other ones.
Was Denny in Limerick?
Now you're talking. Denny was in Limerick, and the food manufacturing, Limerick was the food manufacturing capital of Ireland, and that alone, their stuff was worldwide. They accounted for a percentage of the world trade in what they produced. Their hams and bacon were second to none. Their tea, their flour, everything that they produced won awards and was throughout the world. But then, of course, I suppose part of it was probably during the time the British were running the country, and a lot of these companies got contracts during the war with various big contracts. Now that was one factor, but they were distributed throughout the world also by agents and one thing and another, and I think some of them had offices in the continent and in the US. Now, so we had a great trade, not just in this world, but a great export trade of manufactured goods, high quality.
Very good. We had Perry's Brewery and Let's a brewery in Enniscorthy.
Let's had a brewing license in Enniscorthy. Perry's, if I remember right, it was in Carlow, and I'm not that familiar with it, but I remember it because there was a lot of breweries, by the way, one time, and distillers in every country. You had one in Kilbeggan. Now I think it's made under license by Cooley's Brewery, but there was a brewer in Kilkenny, Kilbeggan Brewery Distillery to produce the best of whisky. Don't forget you had one in Tullamore as well. We didn't talk about that, but it's back on the map again. D.E. Williams, the family in Tullamore, operated this Irish Mist, which was liqueur, and Tullamore Dew, which was a whisky, in Tullamore, and they also operated the five-star supermarkets, which subsequently closed because D. Williams now are no more, but they were a major supermarket group and a major brewer. Now they're no more, they were taken over, so Tullamore and other alcoholic beverages are produced now in Tullamore by an American company with a brewing operation in Tullamore, and a state-of-the-art one.
Okay. Forenca was a company that was in Ireland. I think was it in Limerick?
It was, and
Sure.
Rankia it was a great employer, and it produced tyres, and employed over 4,000. Now, the trouble with it, then a lot of the tyres would have been manufactured, and of course the employment was very good. But tyres is not a natural ingredient of this country, so perhaps the raw material was imported in order for these tyres to be produced. But one of the items that led to its closure was a factor. It was owned by a Dutch company, I think, and the boss of that company was Dr. Hedy.
Harima? Who was it, Harima? Or
What's it about?
who was tied Harima?
That was him, Toyota Rima. He was kidnapped by the IRA and held for some time. Not alone was he kidnapped, there was another fella, Tidy, who was the general manager or something of either Quinsworth or Tesco.
Was it Don Tidy?
Don Tidy,
Yeah.
And so, as I was saying earlier, these were factors that led to the closure of a lot of food companies that were probably British or others, because they figured that it was too unstable. The same way now as you have, because of Brexit in Britain, some of the companies having difficulties about perhaps staying there for one reason or another, that instability. So you can take it that the troubles that we had in this country with IRA violence and the UVF violence in the north of Ireland. Don't forget, there was many people killed in Dublin and in Monaghan with bombs that were brought down by the Protestant UVF, apparently with the complicity and help of the security forces in that area. I noticed they're not having post-mortems about that too much, but that was a very unsettled time, and anybody in business would know, and I was in business, that it was most unsatisfactory because there was going to be very little investment and companies actually be pulling out. So aside from the Irish Free Trade Agreement, there was the instability, political instability in the north, which spilled over down here, and all this combined to have us in the difficulties that we had at that time. A heck of a lot of companies closed down. It was a very tough country for anyone to work in business.
Greenhill's napkins and towels.
They had a manufacturer in place in Carrickmacross, and would have employed 150, 200 people. It was a state-of-the-art factory. That closed as far as I know, because towels would be a raw material in this country from sheep wool, and that which could be probably added value here. It's something that could be made here, I would think, and have quality. So this closure of that facility, it's hard to know. Did the people in charge, did they decide to go to another country where wages were a bit lower? Because it's a fact that the wages have gone a bit high here in regard to in regard to some employment, and food manufacturers are not able to pay the sort of wages that's required in the general course of events and expect to make a profit. Now, of course, they have no outlets to supply their goods because we have a monopoly situation, so any food manufacturer is in serious trouble.
Corcoran mineral waters.
Yeah, they were big, and they were very big and supplied great minerals. But there again, with the closure of family businesses and the decline of the Irish pubs and off licenses, with cheaper imports, I presume, subsidised by the EU and flooding the drinking country. So their customer base, courtesy of the government of the day, was eroded. You're not going to supply too much minerals to the like of Lidl and Aldi, the Germans, or any of the other multiples. They have their own agenda. They buy stuff from China, wherever it is, the cheapest. So their they should have never been allowed to control so much of the market for what we're talking about, because 5%, any government that would know its business about business would have limited any of these multiples to 5% of the market. So if there was no monopolies, and then you would have the fruit and vegetable trade that's gone. You would still have that because there would be competition.
Yeah, there should be, you know, for a lot of the supermarkets, there probably shouldn't be Sunday opening, and if there was no Sunday opening, their little shop might survive.
Well, you see, a government that would know what it's about, understand business, even now could implement something along the lines of the percentage share of the market.
Yeah.
There is no need for any supermarket group in a small agricultural open economy to have a monopoly. It's against the Constitution, but regretfully, Article 45 of the Constitution, which prevents the monopolies, is controlled by it's in the remit of the Dáil, the Irish Parliament, and because it was perceived that they would be look after their voting, where they were getting their votes from the family businesses and the people in country towns and villages, and they're still expecting those votes, but all the family businesses are gone.
Now we're going to move up to Hanlon's ambulance factory in Longford.
Correct, they made ambulances and they were very successful. Hanlon's in Longford, and I think that was Albert Brennan's country. So Longford is an area that hasn't got that much manufacturing industry like Roscommon and the West of Ireland, except for Galway. It does fairly well, and parts of Mayo does well, because I think that man that used to be a minister in Castlebar, what's his name? He was on the Late Late Show at Pilreed. I can't think of his name now, funny enough, but he was in minister or Fianna Fáil minister, and so a lot of industries are still in the west of Ireland, in Mayo, which otherwise would be in trouble because they wouldn't have enough industries. But they have in Castlebar, they have a nice few industries and pharmaceutical companies. So thanks for the goodness for that, that they have that.
Okay, lamb's jams.
Oh, marvellous, a great quality natural ingredients. They had orchards in Donabate and maybe other areas in County Dublin, a lot of orchards, and they gave season employment there for raspberries, strawberries, black currants, gooseberries, you name it, plums. That they had huge orchards there, and they also, of course, people had orchards, farmers often had orchards, and they often supplied these products to the people. There were agents that supplied lambs, and not just lambs, but there was Laird's and Drumshambo, which produced Bo Peep jam, and there was Williams and Woods, which produced some jam, and I can't think of the name of it. You had Shivers and Fruitfield, but in any event, suffice to say that Lamb's Jams had to close because their business was with the family stores. Their business was with the wholesalers. I often was in wholesalers, and the stores, it'd be full of cases of Lamb's Jams, and often Bo Peep as well, because the local shops, the self-service stores, the grocery stores and all the rest of it, stocked Irish products. We can thank them for the fact that we had so many food manufacturers in this country. They were great supporters of Irish products.
Bastalocks were in Tubbercurry, and I think there was some problem and it was brought out of examinership. I'm not sure if it still exists in Ireland, or whether it's actually, or maybe it does exist, the name, but maybe they're manufactured outside the country. Do you know anything about Bastalocks?
Oh, I do indeed. They were a factory owned by the Gallagher Group, which built houses, and so all the locks were manufactured by Basta and supplied in their houses. But the usual Irish narrative, the begrudgery of the media particularly, often employ that there weren't great locks or something, that some other old foreign lock was supposed to be superior. But that wasn't the point. They were an excellent lock, and they were used in a lot of houses, new houses and other houses, when they had to replace their locks. Often used Basta because they were Irish and people were supporting Irish products. So Basta was supported, but one of the snags in this country that we have a media that seems to be have a destructive element in them as regards any Irish manufactured products. They would want to be sort of re-educated to support and promote anything Irish, but it's something that they didn't do, aided and abetted by the useless governments we're saddled with.
There was a few very good companies in Tala. You had Telectron, Irish Metal and Chemicals, Gallagher's Tobacco, I think, and Ernie's Chocolates.
Yes, Ernie's Chocolates, a marvellous company, and a very popular chocolate in the country. But of course they were in ordinary self-service Irish stores, and likewise you had Jacobs, which employed hundreds of people in Tala, and before that in Bishop Street, in Camden, or just at Camden Street, employed 500 or 600, mostly women, and then they had a lot of office staff and then travellers as well, because they were in every store, every grocery store in the country, the same as other products of Irish made. So when the policies of this government led to the closure of Irish retailers, grocery stores, etc., but then all these, the market for what these people were supplying was no longer there, because the monopoly situation weren't interested in doing business with them. You couldn't do business with them and make a profit, because they had other suppliers that could undercut the Irish manufacturer, even though the Irish manufacturer, their prices was very competitive, but not as competitive maybe as stuff that was practically dumped in the country. Because, and by the way, this is something that you won't hear about. There was, when we had authority, there was an anti-dumping legislation. This is very important. I don't think you've ever heard about this.
Okay.
An anti-dumping, because we in the company I worked in the part of the Clover Meats, the pet food sector, we were suffering from major brands coming in from the UK and being undercut compared to the prices that they were charging over there. And we were able to demonstrate that to the Anti-Dumping Commission, which I remember had some dealings with them, and had information, because it was at the coalface. People that's in the management end of it often don't understand the reality of what we were up against, and I was able to convince them. So they put a duty on these imports, and it helped to sort of stabilise the market for the brand leader, which was Spot, which is the product I was selling.
It wasn't just a product. Spot was a company that you created, wasn't it?
Well, no, but it was a product that was there when I was working with part of Clover Meats. It was the brand leader, one of the brand leaders. There was other ones that you could, but it was a brand leader, because once you have more than 10% of the market, you're a brand leader. But we had a lot more than that. And in all the small shops, every one of them, the only dog food the stock was Spot. But of course, as this Anglo-Irish free trade agreement and this other lack of business know-how by the governments allowing multiples to sort of start dominating, and hence all the closures of these companies, including Clover Meats.
Spicer's Bakery.
That was a marvellous bakery.
Where was it?
They made the bread in Navan, at Lumley.
And did they make branded names? What kind of...
Spicer's bread. It was lovely bread, and they made cakes and brown bread and a variety of stuff.
But did they do any brands like that I know? Like, I mean, I never heard of Spicer's Bakery.
No, you see, well, it was up around that area. So they supplied the shops and all the rest of it. But naturally, when the shops were closed down by the policies of the government, they had no more customers. And they closed actually, they lasted a good while. Because there were still ones fit to do business, but then with the arrival of the German discount stores, Lidl and Aldi, that put the kibosh on it. That put the death knell on these stores. So the Spice was only closed there in maybe half a dozen years ago.
Okay.
We're still going.
There seems to be, I mean, Ireland, we consume a lot of bread, but yet there seems to be, if you look over the last 30 or 40 years, there seems to be an enormous amount of bakeries that go bust.
Well, there was a lot of bakeries in towns because in Boyle, for example, we had two bakeries, Egan's and Murphy's, and they supplied shops in the town, and sometimes to both of them, and then they had vans and supplied the surrounding areas down even as far as Sligo, even though Sligo would have had bakeries. A lot of towns had their own bakery and supplied the hinterland, because, as I say, all the stores and shops was operated by Irish people.
Yeah, it's a Munster chipboard. Do you know anything about them?
Well, there was a chipboard factory, a big one in Scariff in County Clare. I think you mentioned something about Kerry afterwards, or maybe there was two, but there was a big one in Scariff, and I think there was hundreds of people, because it was used in all the houses, if I remember rightly, as insulation, chipboard, and it was used in various other sort of facilities, because I remember there was hundreds working in it, and then they were drawn the timber from the kilshire, from the timber factories. From the timber people that did the timber. That was the situation there. So that crowd is gone. So I don't know where the timber is gone now that they're cutting down for kilshire.
Waterford is a place we don't hear of very much anymore. I mean, you had Waterford Crystal. I'm not sure if Waterford Crystal is actually made. I think it's made outside Ireland, if it's made at all. But
Well,
there were companies there.
And then it was world renowned.
Yeah.
With the way the situation developed, there again the stores that stocked it were, I think, bringing in other sort of products. The consumer then were, with the TV advertising, they were buying kind of rubbish really. And Waterford Crystal suffered a bit of a demise, but there was no need for, it still was in demand worldwide by people with taste, or people that wanted to have something like Waterford Crystal.
I'd imagine the American market would have been good.
It was good, and but unfortunately it was taken over by Tony O'Reilly, who had a habit of asset stripping.
Right.
And he also took over Wedgwood, which is an English company. Now, you just can't have two blinking hats in the ring, make a success of one, leave Wedgwood to the others. But this man was in this, what would I call it, takeover mode, and that's the rock that you perish on. And I think because of mismanagement, in my view, Waterford Crystal suffered. Still, some kind of crystal is made in Waterford by the ones that were glass cutters in Waterford Crystal, and I don't know what they call it, but it'd be only a fraction, I think, of what was produced there, because the factory was second to none, and the training and the apprenticeships, it was considered one of the best jobs in the country. And here, through these takeovers.
Okay.
Takeover is a dreadful thing when the person hasn't got the interest and is from outside the jurisdiction. Even though he's Irish, Tony O'Reilly took over the Irish Independent in Middle Abbey Street. It had hundreds of people working in it. Now, that industry changed a bit, but that building is now empty. And I don't know, I think there's probably a handful. And if you want to put an ad in, it's someplace in north of Ireland, even if it's an Irish, and then some other place down in Clonakilty do something. So it's spread all over the place. In other words, it's fragmented. It hasn't got the base that it had in Middle Abbey Street, the tradition. It's like papers closing in Fleet Street in London, which give the British the newspapers that they have.
Semper, there was a lot of job losses there, 650 job losses in Semper.
That's right, it was in Ballyfermot, tyres, and there again, tyres probably is not a natural product of this country. I presume the raw material was imported. Perhaps wages were competitive, making it worthwhile, but whether the wages had something to do with it or the EU or what, I'm not sure, but it's gone, like Forenka.
Okay, and Motorola, Gateway, they were gone in the early 2000s, I think. Navan Carpets, Yall Carpets and Kincora.
They were marvellous carpets. Navan was, I think, nearly one of the last ones that was there, and in demand, because it was a very superior carpet, manufactured to a very high standard. Hundreds working with the expertise to do that, and there would be a lot of native material going into the manufacture of carpets. The same as Yall Carpets were a marvellous company, and they also got contracts abroad, and the same with Kincora in Cork. All these ones are gone, but the tragedy with Navan particularly that I know about was that worker directors got the ownership of it. Whoever had it did that, which was good. But unfortunately, the lure of money made them accept an offer for the business, because a shopping centre was built there where you have Woodies and various others, and they don't do such great business in my opinion. There's various retail outlets there, most of them with imported products, very few Irish made products in their stores. Now, that's why it closed, I believe, and people I know in Navan that worked there were very disgruntled at what the owners, which were former workers, did. So there's bad blood there because of that. There was no need for them to do it.
Okay.
Because those jobs are lost. And now, as far as I know, there's no carpet manufacturer in the country.
Wow.
Dreadful.
Clover meats, sorry, we covered Clover meats, I think, did we?
Well, we only covered some of it. We didn't cover Donley's sausages. We didn't cover the fact that Spot Dog Food was Spot Pet. Well, it was Spot Limited Pet Foods. That was his title. And then there was O'Keefe's. And then there was National Protein later on. O'Keefe's supplied meat and bone meal. And we supplied Ranks along with others. And Ranks, I don't know if you didn't mention Ranks. Ranks Flour Mills. It had a big place in Limerick and it had a big place in Glasnevin in Dublin. And one of their buildings is still there. It's a big monstrosity thing, but now some of the other parts have been turned into apartments. But they were a great employer. There was hundreds working in it. And it closed as well.
It did. And you had a job interview in Arklow Pottery, you were telling me. It's gone now. There's 140 jobs gone there.
They produced lovely pottery and lovely cups and saucers and beautiful stuff. And they were taken over by a Japanese company, which was supposed to secure its there was hundreds working in it, and craft workers. And they produced such good quality stuff that I had an interview there for a marketing manager at one time. And the Japanese owned it, and when I went for the interview, the Japanese are a very inscrutable type of a race, and there was, I think, 6 or 7 of them interviewing me.
Oh, no way! 6 or 7 people!
With their Japanese, and I don't know, was there an Irish token person there, but they were kind of like you'd think I was going for the managing director's position.
Wow.
I was questioned up and down, but somehow or other I thought it wouldn't be a job to get, because I could see that there was going to be trouble down the line, because as I said before, when you haven't got the independent stores, your potential market becomes limited, and I think that the monopoly situation again conspired for their closure.
But surely the Arklow pottery wasn't started by the Japanese.
Oh no, it was started by Irish people, and it was very successful and used by people, because that's what and it was good quality. That's what people wanted. They wanted, if they could get an Irish product, that's what they went for. But then there come a kind of a time when people, for some reason or other, wanted to buy the bloody foreign thing. Don't ask me why, but I blame the media, funny enough, because they tended to sort of belittle Irish products. When we had our own family stores and all the rest of it, well then they were talking to the wind. But then when we suddenly got these monopolies, well then what they did, it turned into fact that the businesses that were there supporting all these companies were no more. And that's where you got your do. That's why they closed.
And Halpin's Tea closed in 1984.
Well, there you are, and that's not that long ago in time-wise. That was probably subsequent to the closure, once again, of the family businesses, that their market dried up, and the multiples weren't going to take their stuff. They only take one or two brand leaders. As far as I know, Lloyd's Tea and Barry's Tea are the only two that's stopped nowadays. There was other tea manufacturers. There was a McGrath's and Bachelor's Walk that you mightn't have heard of. I don't think it's mentioned, but I remember it.
McGrath's Tea?
McGrath's Tea, yeah.
Okay.
That was good tea, and they had customers as well, because shops stopped these.
I think McGrath's Tea is still going. I think I seen it about 2 or 3 years ago.
Well then, if that's the case, somebody is making it under licence.
Okay, fair enough.
And by the way, we didn't mention just thought of it there. Now it's just gone out of my head. McGrath's Tea. Oh, Palgrave Murphy shipping.
Okay.
And Irish shipping. Well, you didn't mention those.
No, we didn't.
Palgrave Murphy was in Eden Quay, and they were a big outfit with ships and bringing stuff, exporting stuff, because we needed to export stuff, and we had Irish shipping, which was in where McBurney's was. That's another big drapery store that closed. It was Irish shipping was there in not Assens, was it Assens Quay? Mm-hmm. There on the other side. In any event, they were Irish shipping and Palgrave Murphy closed when there was a bank strike. There was a bank strike in the 70s, lasted for 6 months, and when it was over, H. Williams were a supermarket group, they're gone. There was there at the time, and an Irish supermarket group that supported Irish products, the only one that ever did. Well, there was another crowd in water, with L&N Tea Company. They had supermarkets, I think they're gone. They supported Irish products.
They were in Kerry, L&N.
Aye, well then they were big, we didn't mention them. So they're coming to me now that I knew them and did business with them. Mm-hmm. But Palgrave Murphy, I had a cousin working there, and it was a place, a great place to get a job if you could get into it. As a matter of fact, my first job in Dublin in a garage, a Semler's garage, the directors of Palgrave Murphy's, the four of them had Peugeots. I'm going back now to the late 50s, and they had Peugeots, and they were serviced by the garage that I worked in. So it was a big company, but when the bank strike was over, they were gone into liquidation. Mm-hmm. And H. Williams had nothing but checks from Palgrave Murphy's. So how that panned out, I don't know, but I presume the people that had submitted those checks were obliged to sort of make good. And Irish Shippings then went, I had an uncle working with them, and they had ships because we couldn't depend on the British to export our products because we were exporting food all over the world. And Irish shipping was very important. So they're gone also.
So back to Limerick now. So Krupp's used to manufacture, I think, was it kitchen stuff in Limerick.
Krupp's, yeah,
There was 500 jobs lost there.
There was, and I think I suppose electrical goods as well, because I think there's something to do with that. Well, there again, it's not something that's. We had Irish Steel, of course. I don't know if they're still going, but they would have been supplying the raw material, probably for the manufacture of those products. But they're gone. But the ones that I regret mostly that's gone was the food manufacturers.
Mm-hmm. They supported a lot of farmers and etc.
And they did.
And then Artex Packaging in Limerick, there's 170 people there gone. Dell, of course, in Limerick, that was a big loss. That was 2,500
people.
people.
At Long called Sportex. They did garments and all the rest of them. They're gone too. It's just that it hopped into my mind there because I knew what they were, and there was hunters working there too.
And I was just mentioning there, Dell, okay, in Limerick, 2,500 jobs. I think a lot of them went to Poland. So the question is, what is the solution to losing all these companies? I did say to you what about introducing in Ireland, rural Ireland, okay, we have small economies in rural Ireland. What about having introduced zones where, for example, in Dublin, the minimum wage is about €10. What about, say, somewhere like Roscommon or somewhere where there's very little employment, introduce, say, a €6 to €8 wage, so we can match Poland and all the others. So you'd have these little exclusion zones in Ireland where there's very little economies going on in small counties. What would you think of something like that?
I would think that would be an excellent idea.
Yeah.
Now, I presume because of the baleful influence as was of trade unions and other vested interests, quangos and lobby groups probably would object to it and use all sorts of nonsense to justify their inability to think outside the box. That would be an excellent idea because Roscommon is very badly served with industry. Mm-hmm. Boyle has none as far as I know, and a town that was thriving in my time. The train stops there on the way to Sligo. It was a grand town, big town, of course, had a lot of family businesses there gone. Hotels are closed now, and it's like a lot of other towns, it's gone down. So my opinion is quite simple, that Roscommon would benefit, and perhaps Longford and Leitrim would benefit. There was a big industry in Leitrim producing cards, like credit cards, MP and F or something. They closed. I think there's something there now, but wouldn't be given quantity jobs. And a lot of people in those industries bought houses and all the rest of it in Carrick-on-Shannon and in Leitrim village. So Leitrim, Roscommon and other counties that has lost out could benefit from that, and I would suggest the sort of industries that would be going there, if it was possible, would be food manufacturing companies, and perhaps companies that could have export potential, so as they could have some training, because there's a lot of old courses. Don't forget, we had ANCO that used to train people. We had CERT that used to train people for the hotel industry, and they were well trained and in demand abroad. And you had
FOSS.
You had FOSS, and you had hotel management companies that was in demand worldwide. We had one of the best reputations for trained staff. I think they're closed, a lot of them.
Well, you have DIT in Cahill Street for the hotel industry.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't hear much about it, and I don't come across them in hotels with properly trained. I come across a lot of people from other jurisdictions that are not trained and that haven't even the command of the language, and even in reception in hotels, come down to Killarney, and I think I might have made something about it at some previous video. It's not the way to run a tourist industry or to run a business, because we did have the best of employees when they were trained. But if you don't train people, you're not going to have expertise. As I say, they were in demand. Hotel managers was in demand worldwide from Ireland, so they were so well trained. And not just them, but others were so well trained. Now what have we got? We haven't got anything like that. We have people going to universities, and I think they're not coming out with what I call an education, spiritual, mental and physical, that will benefit themselves and mankind. They're coming out secular sort of individuals that have nothing to contribute, in my book.
Absolutely. So it just shows you really the importance that when a government enters into an agreement, a trade agreement, it's very important to look at all the aspects of it, especially from a business perspective.
You want to involve business people that, I mean, there was manufacturers here. I presume they didn't involve them. It's for a small country, it's extraordinary the lack of cooperation. Even years ago, it took, I don't know who, to get the cooperative movement going for farmers. They were all just sort of individual voices, and you don't get anywhere that way. I believe that the people that are in business, in Irish business, want to sort of come together and get very tough. But are they going to get a voice? Is this media that we have, this monopoly of a secular media, this RTE crowd and all the rest of them, are they going to kind of support the views that need to be voiced? As far as I can see, it's just this country is going nowhere. I don't see any evidence of a proper plan. You've outlined something there which I support 100%, in order to sort of bring back some of these towns and villages that now are deserted. They deserve something, but are we going to get it from this crowd? I hope the like of other political parties like Renew, Aontú, the Irish Freedom Party, and anyone that has the interest of the country at heart will come forward, because this crowd have been there long enough and they've destroyed the blinking country.
That's it. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you very much, Oliver.